may sound like the German national anthem, but it's actually the national anthem of Europe and soon to be the national anthem of the entire world. Hi, I'm Breen Heffernan, EU scholar. This is Jay Kelly, Euro weenie, and this is Chris Bennett,
That's
Eurosceptic. I'm joined by the two guys today to discuss the future of the euro in part one of our two-part Europe series. We're discussing whether the Europe is going to survive or not, because we keep being told by the newspapers that it's going to fail, that Greece is going to go, that we'll be kicked out of the euro, that everything's going to crumble. But at the same time, there's all these plans with the actual politicians for how we're going to go forward with the euro. So Jay, what do you think? Euro viable or not? Euro warrior?
Yeah, I was just about to say that to you, and I have to be honest with you. I don't know where you got Euro weenie from. It's Euro warrior, and I just need to bring that up because that's the Chicago way.
Anyway, I know this is what you call yourself in your spare time, the Euro warrior over here.
Yeah, pretty much.
So Euro, is it viable?
No, but is it viable?
Not?
Yes, it is viable. If it was unviable, it would have crashed by now. That's the fact of the matter. Because I mean, like, truthfully told, we're over the hump in terms of the European problems. I know that there's still unemployment and youth unemployment, for example, in Spain and Portugal running around the 50% mark. I know that Greece, for example, has, I think it's up to 190% debt. These are problems, but they're not insurmountable problems. And the first thing I'm going to do is actually set out what I reckon is likely to happen, what the solution is going to be.
Straw that'll break the camel's back?
Such as?
Another country. Someone else going down, someone's accounts not being as good as we think they've been so far, something that'll plummet the euro even deeper.
I'll jump in. You know, you describe it as something that's not going to happen. I would say that the euro as a currency is a train wreck in slow motion. It's been going on for months and months and months. It's coming to the end of the line. And I agree with you, Breed, it probably will only take one more explosion in a country's economy to drag this fucker down.
You don't reckon it's viable? You reckon
I don't reckon it's viable in the long term. In the very short term at the moment, while the ECB is pumping billions and billions more euros into a country like Greece to prop up an economy which is essentially fucked and always will be, then yeah, sure, it's viable in the short term, but that can't go on forever.
Look, Chris, to quote Sean Connery, oh sorry.
I'm just saying we've been living in the short term for a long time. So if we're still thinking in the short term, it's not.
That's unfortunately how we are thinking. We are the European politicians are thinking in short-term solutions. Short-term solutions for them are a matter of 8 or 9 months. To the rest of the people who are suffering, to those guys on the streets in Athens, protesting the fact that they can't pay for bread, etc. These are the people who are suffering,
Chris,
while Europeans diddle.
We're going to have to give Jay a word.
Oh, go ahead. Be my guest.
Yeah, I mean, look, with all respect, Chris, that's bollocks, okay? And I say that just, it reminds me of, I just have to be straight with you. I mean, to quote Sean Connery in The Untouchables, because that's the Chicago way. Look, we have to look at this in terms of the long term. A lot has been put into the euro so far, correct?
Yeah, I agree with you.
And it also has a lot of backing. Now, there are problems. Okay, problem number one, the efficiency levels in Northern Europe are absolutely different to the efficiency levels in Southern Europe. That is something that has to be rectified, and that is happening right now. The fact that you've got the troika in a country like Ireland, Portugal, Spain, Greece, Italy as well, pretty much, that's how it's going to sort out. It's going to take another 6 to 8 years for the levels of competitiveness and efficiency to rise, but they will rise.
So that's 6 to 8 more years of austerity.
It is. That is true. It is 6 to 8 years more of austerity. But the truth of the matter is, you dump the euro now. If countries start pulling out of the euro now, or if it goes under, okay, you'll have like an immediate uplift from the devaluation of the currency, followed by crash again. Because these countries are still unviable and they'll still have the debt. Now, what I think is likely to happen as well, Chris, I'll let you speak. So I think you owe me the same dignity here.
Go ahead.
The next thing that I think is likely to happen is that the debt is going to be cut in all of these countries. For the simple reason, it's an unsustainable debt. There's no way that Ireland can pay off the debt that it's built up. There's no way Greece can, definitely. Absolutely not 190%. Portugal, Spain, Italy as well.
So you're saying it's literally financially impossible?
It's impossible. It's an absolute impossibility. It's like being in two places at the one time. So the debt will be cut. Now, it is my reckoning that the bankers are going to try and squeeze as much money out as they can and wring as many changes out of these countries as they can before cutting the debt. But it will be cut because there's no other option.
Right,
it's
look,
the same as, it's almost like third world that, Chris, and there's one last point that I'm going to make.
Well, it better be a good one, because the first two haven't been.
Well, Chris, you know, with all...
Third point, Jay.
Third point is the federalisation of the debt as well. In the long term, for the currency to stick together, you need two big changes. You need closer political union and you need closer economic union. Politically, what that means is making Europe somewhat more accountable so that more people are on board with it, and also so that decision-making is streamlined. Economically, what it's going to mean is federalising the debt, much as happened in the United States under Hamilton when he was Treasury or Secretary of the Treasury. That will happen, but first of all, you're going to have the political jump, and people are going to have to feel a little bit more desperation.
Okay, Chris, what do you think about his
Right,
points?
great. Right, frankly, one of the major points you made there, which I completely disagree with, is the idea that, yeah, that if you take back your own currency, if you go back to that, and I agree with you on one point that, yes, the devaluation is a good thing. It will increase competitiveness. It will increase exports. It'll improve the trade deficit. That's a guarantee, right? That's great. But what you said is it's going to be what you said is going to be followed by an absolutely major crash, right?
No, I didn't say an absolutely major crash, but
along those, let me
Europe
finish. Along those lines, you said that the crash would come after it, probably. But what I would say, though, that is a crash with their own currency is a far better thing to have in the short term for that country than a long-term, drawn-out crash, which is essentially what we're having now with the euro. The fact of the matter remains that if they have their own currency, if they have the ability to devalue, if they have the ability to restructure their economy around a new central bank within their own country, the controls for bringing that country back after a crash of that nature can be done far quicker than they are being done in the European Union at the moment.
You sort of have to go down to go up, sort of an argument.
You have to go. It's guaranteed that those countries that will do this, if it happens, will devalue the currency, will go down. That's guaranteed. But the fact is that their rise will be so much quicker under their own steam than it is under the EU.
Well, look, the truth of the matter is that once one country leaves the currency, more countries are going to leave. And this is one of the reasons why it's going to be protected. This is why the debt's going to be cut. This is why it's ultimately going to be federalised. Now, let's look at... No, hang on a second, Chris. I let you speak. Chris, so I think now you owe me the same thing.
Well, you better hurry up.
That's the Chicago way.
Let our Euro weenie speak.
Excuse me. I feel like walking out at this stage. If I hear Euro weenie one more time, Breed, I'm gone.
Hurry up with your point, Jay.
Anyway, getting back to it. Look, the truth of the matter is... Oh, God, I fucking lost it. Shit.
You lost it. What are you well, in that case, I'm going to jump in.
Point Eurosceptic.
I'm going to jump in on my point then in that case, because frankly, the thing about this whole problem is that we have here is that if you keep the euro in these countries, if you keep it going, and you say you want it federalized, you say you want a tax authority to come in, you want this whole system to be put in place, that's years down the line. That's a long way in the future for that to come in. The fact that we've had 8 or 9 months of politicians bickering simply to get another bailout of 40 billion for Greece, for you to get a federalized government and a federalized tax authority, that ain't going to be a quick fix. That's not going to come in overnight like that. Secondly, and again, to sort of counter your point, I know you're slightly sniggering, but to counter your point over there, if that's going to take a long time, if this is going to go out, at the same time you're pumping billions and billions more euros into failing countries. At the end of the day, if this happens, if they do go out, which I do think Greece is on the knife edge and it could happen, if they do fall out, you've pumped what could be up to 500 billion euros in there by the end of it, could be 200, 300 in Spain and Portugal. That's lost, upwards of 800 or 900 billion euros that could have been done in a situation which is inevitably going to fail anyway.
Chris,
too little, too late.
Chris, I'm going to ask you a question. What do you reckon would happen? Let's say the countries like Greece, Portugal, Spain, Ireland, whatever, pull out of the euro. What do you think is the next thing that would happen in terms of the European Union, the European project then?
I'd hopefully see, I suppose, a sort of a regression back to the free trade agreements, the EEC, go back that way. The trade is important. Everybody knows that. You'd have to be an absolute fucking idiot to say that we don't need Europe, to say that there doesn't need to be some kind of cohesion within the countries. I just happen to believe that they don't need it in currency.
Don't you imagine there'd be a lot of hostility between the countries who have put a lot of money into the EU and things so far, like Germany and France, against the smaller countries who are now pulling out, saying, you wanted our money, but now you're not paying it back.
The larger countries, Germany and France, have made a hell of a lot of money off the back of the countries that have been failing. It's, essentially been in their interest to keep them in a lower position, after all.
Mm. You don't think it's likely? You don't think it's likely?
The collapse of the euro? Not particularly. I think what's going to be interesting is, 5 years' time, we look back on all this and see what's happened then. My reckoning is we're still going to have the euro. The European Union will still be together. It'll be closer than it was before. I think, as I said, all the stuff about the debt being cut. I'm going to answer the question that I asked you anyway. First of all, these countries drop out of the euro. You're going to have a two-speed Europe in that case.
You've already got a two-speed Europe.
No, we've got a two-speed Europe heading towards a one-speed Europe, because of the changes that are being forced through in the southern European countries, let's say Greece drops out. Okay, that's just Greece, whatever. No, it's not just Greece. There's a certain element of a domino effect that could occur in that case, or as it's being referred to today, contagion. What you would end up having is, let's say, a northern European Union, which is very strong. I think it would go more, the template, the model would be something like the Roman Empire, where you had the empire in the west and the empire in the east. And one would last longer than the other. One would be rich, one would be poor. And I don't think anybody wants to see that happen.
Really?
Certainly, I think the decision makers who are in, let's say, Greece and these other countries,
I suppose they've been a free market economist.
I think they would
you
probably
might as well let it happen.
I'm not a free market economist at all.
But essentially, if you want capitalism to survive, the whole idea of too big to fail,
well, I mean,
really
how do you mean capitalism to
survive?
survive, and how do we get on to capitalism surviving?
I'm just going into the fact that, if we bailed out the banks, the idea of too big to fail, you drop Greece out of it. I agree with you that there would be a different speed of Europe, but having a Northern European Union, an EEC essentially, within the Northern European countries, wouldn't necessarily be such a bad thing.
I've got a question as well. If Greece or Ireland or someone was to drop out of the euro, does that mean they're out of the EU? Because it shouldn't, because we all got into it.
No, it doesn't technically mean they'd be out of the EU, but
why is it held over everyone's head as if you're out of
that's
Europe,
a scare tactic, definitely. I mean, that's sort of playing politics, but there is something behind it as well. Let's say you have. Would it be a case that they'd withdraw from the euro with the aim of rejoining it later on? No, that's not going to happen. They'd start printing off their own currency.
No, I agree with that. That would never happen.
Yeah. I mean, once you're gone, you're gone.
Yeah.
And I don't think any country really wants to be in that position of cutting off their options completely that way. Would it be a case that they'd be kicked out of the EU? Well, no, that's not going to happen. But it certainly brings it closer. And the likelihood is that once they'd be taking one step back from it, then another step is going to be taken back. And particularly, funny enough, because once you can devalue your currency, people in Greece, wherever, they're going to start saying, oh my God, we're so much better off now. And then the anti-European sentiment, which is somewhat illogical, but that's the way the mobs work.
But then that's the problem you get.
They're going to just jump out.
But that's the problem you get tying up a European concept within a currency.
It's actually too dangerous to actually let, for countries to leave. It's too dangerous to the European project, and ultimately the countries that would leave are the countries who would suffer the most. Because all the investment as well from outside, the investment from China, the investment from...
That argument...
How much has China invested in Europe, really? I mean, you said China.
Billion.
It's 8.9 billion invested from China.
Yeah, China alone, and that was actually in the last 3 years.
Well, how have they been investing this money?
Through banks. They've actually been loaning the money to the European Union.
So it's in a lot of other countries' interests for Europe, for the euro not to fail?
Absolutely, yeah.
Wow.
Both the United States and China. Russia obviously has loaned money as well.
Yeah,
I mean, this is fact. These
are the Chinese have been coming over for years, siphoning off.
They've been doing it for like 10 years, but I mean, they actually invested more in the last 3 to 4 years than they did since the currency started, or since the currency started in 1999. That's, I mean, they were buying up currency because remember as well, China had...
thought they were at home making PlayStations.
I thought so too, but apparently, look, you know how they love their figures and their numbers.
But the thing is, though, Jay, you brought a point there. You were talking to Breed about it being scare tactics to essentially tie the currency up within a political union, and then you sit there and you say this. You say this about, oh well, if one leaves, it's bad for everyone. It's within the interests of everyone to keep them together. That essentially sounds to me a little bit like the old USSR, that it's cold on the outside. You don't want to go over the wall, kind of thing.
That's the same logic as well that was used by the British Empire for what 200 years. You don't want to be,
and good logic it was too.
Then why did the empire fail?
Because it was too big to fail. No, it failed for a number of reasons. It's something that's not on this debate, frankly. The debate goes back to the currency.
Well, I mean, like, the great thing about Europe is that it isn't held under force. I mean, that's the big difference between it and any other thing.
Democratic.
But I would actually say that
it is democratic.
But the point that you're making, that the force comes whilst it's not an armed force, whilst it's not a force of that nature, the force is there through economic ties, through austerity packages, through bailouts, getting that. But that's a force held over people.
All these countries actually have the option to leave any time they want, any moment they want.
Yeah, but you're saying they don't really have the option. You said it would be catastrophic for them.
There has always been a democratic deficit in Europe.
Catastrophic.
There's always been a democratic deficit in Europe. We can't really leave. Nobody has ever done it. The small countries really have no right. They don't control anything. The big countries control everything.
But they get a hell of a lot of money out of it. If you actually look at the history of the European project, the small countries, they get money from the big countries. Ireland got money from the big countries.
But not for nothing. We've given away a lot. All of our seas, fishing.
Yeah, how much money would we actually make from the fucking seeds, from the fishing? I mean, like, literally, realistically, how much? I remember under Albert Reynolds in the early 1990s, we got, at the time, it was 8.9 billion punts, Irish pounds, to actually fucking boost up our economy, to build the roads, and that, more than anything else, is what started off the boom, as it happens. But how much
what is the value of our oil fields, Jay? Everything we've given away to Europe.
We didn't give the oil fields away to Europe. We actually gave them away to anybody because we couldn't hold them. I mean, the truth of the matter is, that's our fault, not Europe's. The oil fields, every problem that we have in this country, make no mistake about it, we can actually trace back to ourselves.
Europe, the scholars, the academics, the well-learned ones, they came in, they knew how to bargain with Ireland. They set us up, they offered us a bit of money, but we'll take those old assets of yours that you don't really want anyway. We were stuck in a rush. We were poor. We said, come on, come in, give us this fine money you have there. And now that we've sorted ourselves out, we're starting to go, oh, jeepers.
Who was the actual problem here? The truth of the matter, that Ireland, and this is why Ireland can never succeed.
That long, Jay. We've not been representing ourselves and governing ourselves for that long. We're still novices in it.
Since 1922?
Yes.
Yeah, that's like nearly 100 years. I mean, you look at a country like,
I'm talking
for
about
example,
in the 70s we only had it 50-odd years, and suddenly we're...
Look, here's the actual crux of it, and it's something about Ireland and the culture of Ireland. 1945, you had let's say, South Korea, yeah? They basically had wooden plows. That was their technology. Now they have like Hyundai, Honda. They have Samsung as well, I think, is South Korean, yeah?
Your point being?
Yeah, my point is, they became independent in the late 1940s. Since then, they have absolutely powered... Pretty much, yeah.
Pretty much, which is how Ireland might have gone.
But no. Ireland's had independence since 1922 and always really exported its people. The truth of the matter is, this is not a country that can run itself very effectively.
Well, that's not true.
I mean, whether socially or
let me just jump in here with a question. Because you've drifted away into the 20s and the 40s, and I feel like I'm gone back in time on this show. What we're really talking about here is the euro today. I have a question for you, Jay. Straightforward question.
Yep.
You know, we're talking about Ireland. You're talking on an Irishman. Would you prefer to be like Iceland? Would you prefer to go down Iceland's route as an Irishman? Would you prefer to go down Iceland's route, having control of your country, devaluing it, and with the European debt saying, fuck you, we're not paying it back?
Quite honestly, I do not trust Irish people to run this country properly. I mean, let's say, like we've been independent since 1922, yeah? And we had, 10 good years. 10 good years, which happened to be during the during our membership
more than 10 good years. You've just blanked it out because of the past 3 or
okay.
7 crap
Tell me
years.
when we actually had net immigration rather than emigration. Tell me exactly, because that's the best marker.
Look, 2012, Jay. Right now,
I can tell you. I know the answer to that one.
Island. We're never going to have mass immigration.
No. Okay, tell me when we've been a genuine economic success since independence.
Since independence from the I think the 80s, 90s.
No, 80s were
early
absolutely
90s.
dire.
Well, they
80s were
improved.
like
The 80s were not dire.
No. The 80s from start to
Anyway,
finish
we're seriously
was
we're on a moot
absolutely.
point.
It was
Is
emigration
there
the whole
any
way.
alternatives?
I mean,
What
we
I want
actually,
to know.
you know,
No?
we were.
The alternative is Iceland.
The alternative Iceland, yes or no? 2012, right now.
We'll never.
Yes
We
or
could
no?
never, even if we tried, be like Iceland. If we could, we would have made that decision. You know, we would have let the banks
still
fail.
open, as you've said before. The decision is open for
No.
any country to leave the European
Oh yeah, no, absolutely.
project.
No,
essentially.
look, I'll tell you what.
So what does
I would say to people, let's leave the European Union and see what happens. Let's see how far we go. Let's see what happens then.
So the euro now, where are we going to go with this? I would say, for my own personal thing, I would say 50-50. I would say it's still on a knife edge. I'd say it's 50-50. Next 2-3 years is going to tell. If one goes, and I do think Greece could have the potential to do it, I'd say 50-50.
It has the potential. I don't think it's 50-50. I will put a figure on it. I would say 70% certain it's going to stay, but, and this is actually putting a big figure on it, 30% that it'll go. And that is, that it's probably more like, you know, 85% certain that it's going to stay. I mean, it would take another black swan to knock it out, but realistically, it's going to stay.
Well,
realistically, in 10 years, I mean, we're still going to have the euro,
Yeah.
and Europe will actually be stronger than it was and more united than, you know, it
I
is
think-
right now.
I think the
luck.
future is going to be interesting. If anyone would like to petition the government to leave the euro, you can send your support to Bríd Heffernan at effecttv.com, and please join us tomorrow night for the second part of our Europe series.